This next game is played between none other than Bobby Fischer and Bent Larsen in a candidates tournament to see who would later on face off against Boris Spassky for the World Chess Championship. Not only is this one of the best chess games Bobby Fischer ever played, but it's also a part of his legacy and his run to later on become chess champion and overthrow the Soviet chess regime. This is personally one of my favorite games of Bobby Fischer, and as you'll see, Bent Larsen was no slouch either. Anyway, let's get into the game and enjoy one of the best chess games ever played. Okay, Bobby Fischer had the white pieces, and Bent Larsen plays the French defense. Okay, Bent Larsen went for bishop b4, which is perfectly fine. Also, another mainline variation is knight f6, e5, and then we have this playing for c5. Okay, anyway, Bent Larsen didn't play that. He played bishop b4, which is the winner variation. Okay, Bobby Fischer played e5 here, and Bobby Fischer goes to kick out the bishop. He's asking the bishop, what are you doing here, okay? Let me just go backtrack one move. Also here, it should be noted that you have to play e5 here. If you play this now, Bent Larsen would just take the knight and then win the pawn, which you don't want to happen. So that's why e5 is played. And a3, attacking the bishop. Bent Larsen goes ahead and chops off the knight and doubles the pawns on the c-file. Now, a lot of chess is a give and take, at least at the really high levels. So basically, two bishops are better than, are a good pair, right? The bishop pair is an advantage. It's better than having the knight, bishop, or two knights. However, having double pawns is usually bad. So basically, this is a trade-off, okay? All right, so we have c5 attacking the center. Bobby Fischer follows it up with a4. Now, why do you think Bobby Fischer played a4? Well, you'll see later on in the game, Bobby Fischer wants to have the option of going this way or this way with his bishop. And now he can go here because the rook protects the bishop. Okay, we have knight c6, knight f3, and both players are just developing at this point. Not much to talk about here. This is all theory. Bobby Fischer castled, and now Bent Larsen plays c5. This is the first committal move. First, it should be noted also that you wouldn't take here because why would you take? Now you undoubled your opponent's pawns. So I just said before that it was a trade-off. Bent Larsen gave Bobby Fischer the two bishops, but he also left him with double pawns. So again, if he traded here, it would alleviate the double pawns, and it would pretty much, wouldn't make any sense strategically, right? So it's good to not only know the openings, but the reason behind the openings. Anyway, okay, so we have c4 here, and bishop e2. And now we have f6. f6 is common in the French defense because we have such a strong pawn center that black wants to chop off. However, it's also double-edged because moving the f-pawn can be dangerous as it leaves this diagonal to your king open. Okay, Bobby Fischer continues his development. Notice how good players, they put a strong emphasis on development, and they put their pieces in the center, and they usually have good results, right? Okay, so again, developing. And Bobby Fischer does, in fact, put his bishop on this diagonal. This diagonal was okay, but it didn't have really a lot of squares to go to. So these squares he can't go to. He can only go here. This bishop has much more scope, and it's stopping the king from castling, or at least kingside. So he would have to go queenside, if anything. However, he doesn't want to go queenside. Why doesn't he want to go queenside? Because there's an open B file. So there's an open B file to the king side, so to the queen side. So if he went queenside, he would have a rook staring at his king, and he doesn't want that. So now Bent Larsen is already in a situation here. Okay, so we have trades on e5, and now what does white do? Bobby Fischer simply develops a piece. He develops his queen to the center of the board where it puts pressure on the knight, and it can go in any direction. Now also we have a discovery on the knight, a potential discovery. So Bent Larsen saw that, of course, because he's one of the best chess players in the world, and he played knight g6 to get out of that. Okay, now Bobby Fischer here is like, I have no good forcing moves, I have no good threatening moves, so I'm going to just kind of, develop my pieces and improve my position here, right? Okay, it also should be noted we don't necessarily want to take this. This is double-edged here because it does open up the G file to white's king. Okay. So Bobby Fischer plays bishop h5. He was like, my bishop wasn't doing much over here, but now it's pinning the knight. So that's a very, very good pin here because it's very uncomfortable, right? Okay, and Bent Larsen plays king f7 to just kind of alleviate the pressure that Bobby Fischer has going on the king side. Now, if he takes, he can also take back with the king. He can also try to manually castle here, right? Because that's the only way Bent Larsen could get his king to safety. He doesn't want to go queenside, as I mentioned, because there's an open rook here. And he can't castle kingside because it's illegal. So basically, Bent Larsen's going to put his rook over here on e8 and then go to g8 and h8. However, when the opponent's king is in the center and when it's trying to manually castle or get to safety, this is where our alarm bells should be going off. And we should really just, again, take this opportunity that's striking right now and really just lunge forward and open up the center. And that's what Bobby Fischer does. He plays f4, and he's going to try to bust open the center, as you'll see, while the king's in the middle. Okay, so again, rook e8. Okay, so Bent Larsen's going to try to make this maneuver. However, after f5, that's going to be tough because the knight's pinned to the king, and now it's being attacked. So the only thing to alleviate this without losing a piece is to take, and now Bobby Fischer takes this pawn. This pawn was defending this pawn, and now Bent Larsen's center is falling, and now he can't go back this way because he's in check. So Bent Larsen steps forward, and now Bobby Fischer just simply improves his bishop. He's like, my bishop did its job, and now that it did its job, I'm going to bring it back to the center of the board. Okay, and we have knight e5 here. Bobby Fischer pins the knight. Okay, Bent Larsen steps out of the pin, and we have our first tactical shot. Okay, now why would Bobby Fischer do a rook exchange or a rook sack? Basically, sacking the exchange, we call it, right? Well, I'll show you why. Okay, so let's say black played a random move, right? Or whatever. Let's say white comes here. This is what Bobby Fischer wanted to do. Bobby Fischer wanted to fork the queen and knight. However, he can't do that because we have an in-between move, check, and after we take back, he simply just steps out of the way, and there's no loss of material, so he didn't accomplish anything by doing that, and also he busted up his own king position. So for that reason, Bobby Fischer's like, hey, I'll take with the rook first, so there's no knight there. So now, if the queen comes down here, I'll just take the free bishop because the queen was defending the bishop. And if the rook comes down here, well, now I have a fork, and there's none of this stuff because that's illegal because there's no knight there, right? So now he does get material back. Okay. So for that reason, Bent Larsen actually took with the queen, felt that was better. Bobby Fischer picked up the bishop, and now we have a material imbalance, but an even position. Okay. And Bent Larsen takes control of the center with tempo, hitting the queen. Now, all of his pieces are in the game and very active. And this actually looks scary. I'm not sure if I would want to play with the white pieces here, but Bobby Fischer saw everything. And to play this position, you have to see everything. It's a very sharp position. So there's no doubt in my mind that Bobby Fischer was seeing moves way ahead. Like he was looking into the future. He probably saw moves 10 years from now. That's how far ahead he was in the future. So he takes the pawn on b2, and now we have check, and the king moves into f1. Now, before you ask yourself, why didn't the king just go there? Well, checkmate is bad, and you don't want to get checkmated, right? So these guys are not going to get back rank checkmated. They're just not, right? They're the top dogs. That doesn't happen. So Bobby Fischer's like, yeah, I'm not going to checkmate it today. No, thank you. Bent Larsen's like, no, please, I insist. I'm going to checkmate you on f2 now. And what are you going to do? Because how do you stop it? Like literally, how do you stop f2? Well, the only way to stop it is the bishop, right? But if the bishop comes here, well, it stops it, but there's also nothing defending the bishop. So you just lose the game, right? Well, Bobby Fischer had an idea. He's like, well, I have to play bishop c5. It's the only way to stop the mate, but I also have to support that square with time because time is of the essence, right? So he plays queen c6 check, guarding the square and checking the king. Now, the only thing is Bent Larsen doesn't just move his king out of the way. No, that would be too easy. He blocks with the rook, putting all the pressure back on Bobby Fischer. So now it looks like he's losing because it looks like Bent Larsen was one step ahead of Bobby Fischer. However, he was not. Bobby Fischer was probably 100 steps ahead of him. Bobby Fischer plays it anyway, bishop c5. Now, the point is, if you take with the rook, Bobby Fischer takes the queen, and now both rooks are attacked, and this is an absolutely winning position. So for that reason, Bent Larsen threw in a check. Bobby Fischer came to G1. We have another check. Okay, there's a discovery here. So check, gets out of the way. Another check. Bobby Fischer gets out of the way, and now Bent Larsen picks up the queen. Probably thought he was doing really well here, and Bobby Fischer took the rook. So Bent Larsen finally got the queen. The only thing is, at what cost? Now Bobby Fischer has 2 bishops and a rook for the queen. So this is technically an even position, but an extremely hard position to play. Okay, Bent Larsen picks up pawn, and Bobby Fischer checks the king. So he gets out of the way of the attack of the queen with check. So you'll see tempo is a very big deal in this game and in chess in general. So the king moves out of the way. Bobby Fischer picks up that pawn. Why does he pick up that pawn? Well, not only is it a pawn, and a pawn is a pawn, but it creates a pass pawn. And this is going to be really hard to stop. And Bobby Fischer, as you see, is going to try to escort this pawn up with his 2 bishops and his rook. Okay, so Bent Larsen, no slouch either. He's a tough customer. He's like, I'm going to come down here. I have a pass pawn too, my friend, and I'm going to queen it. Bobby Fischer's like, no. I'm going to queen mine. I'll show you. I'll show you how to queen a pawn. Okay, so another pawn is taken, and Bobby Fischer starts pushing. Okay, Bent Larsen gets behind the bishop. So now if the pawn pushes again, that's going to be silly. So for that reason, Bobby Fischer moves out of the way from that potential attack with check. Again, tempo and initiative, very important. King moves out of the way. Now he pushes. Bent Larsen goes for that pawn again. Bobby Fischer defends it. Okay, now he's stopping the pawn from coming here. And if the bishop comes here, that doesn't do anything, obviously. So Bobby Fischer wants his bishop here, but it's not covered. So what do you think he did? He played rook b1. Okay. And Bent Larsen pushes the pawn, and Bobby Fischer plays bishop b6. And after c2, Bobby Fischer throws in a check, and Bent Larsen resigned. The reason why he resigned is because after this, he has to block, and he takes. And after takes, we just play bishop g1, believe it or not. Let black queen, and then there's no way to stop white from queening, and there's going to be a significant material edge for Bobby Fischer. All right, folks, there you have it. That's a classic game, one for the ages, and it was a part of Bobby Fischer's journey and legacy to eventually become the world champion of the world in chess and defeat the Soviet regime. Anyway, I hope you liked that video. If you did, smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys later.